Today's stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hi, my name is Leandro Fachinacci, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is the freaking waveform display, and things were kind of embarrassing and ridiculous yesterday. We are going to try to recover from that ridiculous state today. So in case you are new here, I'm doing real-time audio effects in Reaper using JS effects, and the intent is that they are going to be audio effects that kind of show what the effects are doing to the audio, to the extent that that's possible. And a big part of that is showing the waveform. Just like you see the waveform when you record something, like showing what the wave looks like, I want to show that in real time in the effect. And there are many effects that do this, but none of them are open source and work exactly the way that I want them to work. So we're building our own. And yesterday I was playing around with what was supposed to be a simple thing, a tangent on what we were doing, actually. Yesterday, we were going to work on alignment of some bleeding stuff that I hope to get to later today. But then I took this tangent into colors, and that was a whole thing. So after the stream yesterday, I spent some time playing around with parameters. I even looked at the source for 2 other plugins. I think I got a handle on what was wrong and what is possible to do. So let's look at what we have here in this example effect. Naturally, this is not drawing waveforms, but it's the same principle because I have something drawing here on the right. This square going up and down is going to simulate the drawing of the waveform getting thinner and thicker and going up and down. And then the idea is, can we just we are drawing this into a temporary buffer that is off screen, and later we plot this on the screen. At this point, we're plotting the waveform on the main screen. So this waveform is a temporary, an image that you don't really see. It's off screen to begin with. And the idea is, can I plot the image onto itself? So you can see that I have the destination of the wave, the destination I'm drawing to is this waveform image, and I'm drawing into that. Can I bleach an image into itself, but offset it to the left? So you can see that this argument, it's the X position of the source. So I'm dropping the first 10 columns. And then here is the position where I am bleeding to the destination. And in this case, I'm passing 0. So it means that I'm dropping the leftmost 10 columns, and I am drawing everything, offsetting everything by 10 pixels to the left. And then we'll get to this in a moment. Let me see if I should change something about this. I think I should change it to be like that. Yeah, sure. So now this is the effect that I wanted to have yesterday in the stream, and I failed miserably. I don't even remember what made this work. It was something silly about the coordinates. It was nothing interesting or crazy. It was just me getting the coordinates wrong. It's very hard to do these things, especially when you're thinking on your feet and you're streaming that. So that's complicated. And now I got the right coordinates, and this is the effect that I wanted to have. So over time, you can see that the waveform is moving to the left. And what is surprising when I finally got this to work is that it's actually not blurring. When I first tried this experiment with some code that unfortunately I threw away, I really wanted to see the code now. In the first attempt I had at this, it was blurring the image as it went, which was kind of a cool effect. It's nothing like what we are going for. We want the thing to continue being crisp, but it looked super nice. So it could be useful sometimes. And I'm not able to reproduce this anymore. I think that maybe it had to do with me using fractional coordinates, which made anti-aliasing kick in, and as anti-aliasing accumulates on top of itself, it would blur. But this is for sure not blurry. It's crisp the whole way through because I'm using integer values. So maybe that was that. I don't really know. In any case, so there is this idea of bleeding an image onto itself to the left. And this is definitely something we can do, but there is a wrinkle. As you can see here, when I bleed something on top of a temporary image, it's going to accumulate on top of what was there. It is not going to erase the image, then bleed it fresh. So we are accumulating, and that's actually desirable, this idea of accumulating into the image instead of replacing what's there. That's exactly the reason why we are doing the waveform drawing in a temporary image, because we want to retain it for the next time we go around. So that idea is actually good. The problem is, once we are bleeding on top of what was already there. So we need to erase the right column here where there is this original rectangle that is going up and down. This is the amount of the waveform that we are going to draw in this pass. So we need to erase the screen, take out whatever is there. And the way that I'm doing this right now in the code that you are looking at right now is I am selecting black and I'm drawing a rectangle that goes from the top down to the bottom. And that of course works, but it draws in black, which means that it's going to overwrite whatever was behind it. That's bad because I want to be able to draw my waveform display on top of anything. Maybe on top of some user interface, maybe on top of some like line segments showing time. That could be useful for a delay, for instance. Let me show you what I mean more precisely. I can use the oscilloscope that comes with REAPER to demonstrate. So I may want to have some graph like this with the labels in the axis and then draw the waveform on top of that, just like what this is doing here. Something like this. So I don't want my waveform display to erase whatever is behind it. I want it to draw on top of. So I want some transparency on this temporary image that we are drawing to. So that black rectangle is not going to fly. And then I played around with so many things to try and fix this. I played around with the mode, and the mode can be set as the fifth argument to GFX set. So I can set something to be black, fully opaque, and in additive mode. And that doesn't work. It doesn't erase what was there. And that's why we see this blob of white, which is the effect we were having yesterday as well, because I was not erasing things right because I didn't have the right coordinates. But I'm drawing something that is black, and in additive mode, it just doesn't add anything to that. I can also set the alpha to -1. That is not gonna work. This is subtractive mode. Subtractive mode doesn't work either. So I am at loss. I cannot make this transparent. Well, I actually found out something else that doesn't exactly work, but it's closer to working, which is this idea of multiplying and adding a rectangle. It's kind of a weird thing. We have used this in the past when we were looking at brightness and contrast. So what this does is you have to pass the coordinates, so x, y, width, and height. And then you have to pass values for the multipliers for RGB and alpha, and the adders for RGB and alpha. And this is going to multiply and add each pixel in the given rectangle by the amounts given here. So in this case, what I have is I have a rectangle that spans across that whole area that I was drawing a black rectangle in. Now I am just doing this multiply add. and I am passing as multipliers a bunch of zeros. So in effect, this is going to turn off or erase what was there in the temporary image. And this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Okay, this is better. So it didn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work still has to do with that problem I mentioned in the beginning. I am bleeding on top of the existing image. So I am not erasing, like when there is a, right at this point, hang on, I'll try to do a screenshot. So the problem here is we are on the second iteration. So we drew a square here in one iteration, and we are in the second iteration here. So we are drawing a square here. This is the previous square, and we are about to bleed it to the left. When we do that on the next frame, it's not going to erase this from here. And that has to be the case. I don't want to erase this from here because I want it to be on the left and on the left and on the left. So there is nothing I can do about this really. I want to bleed the image on top of itself, but I also want to erase it at the same time. So I wanted to like overwrite what was there. Or maybe I wanted some kind of concept of transparency being something that you can apply to, but bleeding doesn't work that way. There is also some notions of mode that we could play with. So when I am bleeding here, I could set a GFX mode of 1 to be in additive mode. That doesn't make any difference. I can add 2, and this changes something that I forget. I think it changes the alpha of something when bleeding. It doesn't work. I can try adding 4, and that still doesn't work. So I enabled all the flags that I could, and it doesn't work. So there is no way of taking something that is transparent and overriding what was there when bleeding. Just doesn't work that way. Bleeding doesn't work that way. So at that point, I could get bleed into another temporary image, which I could erase first. Gets complicated, gets messy. I think that actually this idea of bleeding everything to the left is not going to fly. But look at what happened here. It erased these pixels all right. It's just that it didn't erase the pixels that were already on the screen when bleeding. So when this line kicked in, it didn't do the right thing. But this line is doing the right thing. And this is what we need to fix our implementation, the main implementation, not this experiment. So got really complicated and weird, but we are getting there. So let's return to, save whatever. Let's return to the fact that we are actually writing the waveform display. And I will also open the library. So let's look at where we are bleeding stuff. Not here. This is a comment. About here. Yeah. So we will get here and we are erasing stuff here. This is where we are erasing stuff and we are doing the wrong thing. We are drawing a rectangle which is transparent. We are setting the transparency to 0 and drawing a rectangle. That doesn't work. But we can use the multiply add trick here. Hopefully that will work. And Bo is here. Hello, Bo. It's great to have you here. Haven't seen you in the chat for a couple of days. It's great to have you back. And Stalling Green is here. Hello. It's great to have you here as well. I think that maybe the language is limited, which may explain why most JS plugins do not have amazing interfaces. Well, it is true that the language is limited, but that's kind of on purpose so that people could build the abstractions they think is necessary. So the foundation is there. You can do a lot. And it's just that sometimes you have to build a lot of stuff by yourself or use some library that does that for you, which is what we are trying to build. And there is also another library by Geraint Love that does a lot in terms of graphical user interfaces. But I mean, look at this. This is awesome. I think that is mostly like exploring the boundaries of what you can do in JS effects more than being like practical. It's eye candy, but eye candy means something, right? It's a big deal. It helps you sell the effect. And look at this, it's doing fluid dynamics, it's interacting with the cursor, and there are all these menus that pop up here. And I would say that from a usability perspective, this is not awesome because it's just a bunch of icons and then you have to hover and then you have to look at the tooltip to see what this is even doing. But I mean, just look at this. If you can do this, you can do a waveform display. Or maybe I cannot. We'll see about that. But it is possible. JS Effects can do it. Maybe I can't. But we'll see. I think I can. I think we'll do it. Right, so let's review how we are erasing stuff from the screen, because that is the main bug. In fact, let's just bring the effect into the track. I don't even remember what it's doing exactly. Okay, I remember what it's doing. It's going to start drawing on top of itself in a weird blue color because we are in additive mode. Turns out that additive mode doesn't really work for this. I think it worked in one experiment in the past, but I was not treating the case of drawing on top of something that is already there. And Tail is here. Hello, Tail. You said you would watch the stream today, and here you are. I appreciate that. Right, so we have something about alpha, and we are not playing with alpha anymore. And then any occurrences of this. There you go. So let's revisit what we are doing in terms of mode as well, because we are not changing the mode. There you go. Yeah, but I think it's good that we explore this idea of modes, because this is going to be here. This is a bunch of constants to translate the weird stuff that you have to pass into GFX mode. This is definitely more readable than a 0, a magic number. Right, so let's go down again to the waveform drawing thing. And then let's review what we have. It's a bunch of taking things out of the data structure, computing coordinates, setting the destination image, which is this temporary off-screen image. Then we get into a loop that is going to really do the drawing. So this is where it gets interesting. A bunch of computation of coordinates. Then this rectangle is the part where we are going wrong. This is the part we want to fix. How are we going to fix this? Well, by using that idea of multiply, add. What are the coordinates? They are the same as these ones. And what are the multipliers? Effectively black. And do I want to keep any transparency? No, I want to keep this as 0. So these are kind of magic numbers, but I think I'm okay with that. And then I set the color and I draw the waveform itself. And then I do a bunch more of bookkeeping in terms of the auxiliary variables I need and everything. And I think that this does it. All right, let's check. Okay, so at least nothing broke. We are still drawing across the screen. And as it wraps around, see, it's now no longer doing that weird additive blue thing. And if the other thing is it going to erase what was there? Because that was a big issue. And I will be silent for a moment and this whole waveform thing should go away. We did it. All right. So next, I will commit and then we'll look at another tricky problem. I'll just review what I wrote. Okay. And I guess now we learned. If you want to erase something from a temporary image, this is a good way of doing it. Multiply by a bunch of zeros. Or at least that's the only workaround I could find. By the way, I think that idea of drawing with a different mode and everything, I think that actually that works in video processors. I may be misremembering. There is an old video of mine in the channel in which I explained how to do masks in video processor. Masks work with transparency, of course, and I think that I did something to that effect. But I also used something that multiplied. So I don't really remember what was going on there, but I think that there is another way of erasing when you are in the video processor. The video processor and the user interface in JSFX, they have an overlap, but they are not exactly the same. There are features that are only available in one of the two, and I think that modes of drawing is one of those features. But other than that, look at that. We are drawing a waveform. It is transparent, or at least its background is transparent. It goes across the screen relatively smoothly, and we are running at 60 frames per second here, so awesome stuff. And it's only consuming 0.1% of the CPU, which isn't ideal, but it's pretty okay. I'm very happy with this. Now, the next tricky thing that we are going to work on is this thing here on the left. You can see that as I am speaking, the waveform is coming from the right, but it's also showing up here on the left. This has to do with kind of a concurrency issue, and we are going to look into that. The concurrency is between two different things. One is, and you can see that as I move to another screen and come back, this seam where things connect is moving around. We have to look into that later, but the primary issue is that when you first load the effect into the track, it should not be drawing this here on the left. Let me explain why it's drawing and how we can fix it. First, why it's drawing. Well, there is a concurrency between the code that is drawing and the passing of time. This is running at 60 frames per second, but there is no guarantee that, first of all, we are getting 60 frames per second. Some frames may be dropped. Also, there is no guarantee that the frames are equally spaced. Most probably, they're not equally spaced because there is a bunch of things happening. I am running OBS. I am running 2 REAPER instances. I am doing a lot of things. I'm running Visual Studio Code. All those things add up. And the computer has to share the processor time amongst all those tasks. And there is no guarantee in REAPER that it will get 1 frame on the slotted time. It may be ahead of time, ideally. It may drop the frame. So the passing of time and the successive calls to the UI thread, they form a kind of a concurrency. And the way we fix this, the way we went about dealing with this is by introducing a layer of abstraction in the middle. This layer of abstraction in the middle is what I call the split index. So there is a write index. This is the thing that, as I speak, is writing more of the waveform on the right here. So there is the write head. The write head is based on the previous position of the write head, and this is called the write index. So this is based on how often the UI thread is called in relation to the audio thread. That's kind of complicated and annoying, but it is effectively the write index is tied to how many times per second or how often the GFX block is going to run. If a frame is dropped, whatever, this is going to be called 1 time less than before, but it's only going to affect the write index. And not this write index, however, this one, this write index. Then there is the split index. The split index is not tied to the write index is not tied to how often the GFX block is running. The split index is tied to time. We update the split index based on the passing of time, based on the clock. We look at the clock, and then we update the split index. That's why when I move to something else, I can load another plugin. When I come back, this seam here, the split index, is somewhere else because the passing of time has changed. When the UI is not running, time is still passing. The universe is still happening. You're still watching me. Time is passing. But Reaper is not calling the GFX block. So the split index is continuing, wrapping around as it does. Conceptually anyway, it's doing that. But the write index is not updating. The write index is just sitting there. And then eventually when I go back, the write index starts writing again, but the split index is all over the place. So there are two issues that we have to deal with. The first is the split index moving around. And the way we are going to handle that is by checking whether we are drawing or not. When we are no longer drawing, the next time we start drawing, I need to reset the split index to 0. Or not to 0, to the write index. I need to synchronize the two indices. That's issue number one. Issue number two is the issue of this being wrong to begin with. And when I load the plugin into the track, it draws that weird shape here on the left. This is something related, but not quite exactly the same. So the issue why this is happening is you could think, oh, the split index is just out of sync. And it's not quite that. It is somewhat out of sync with the write head, but that is actually expected. There, as I explained before, there is a race condition. There is a concurrency problem. There are these two things, the UI thread being called and the passing of time, and they may not be 100% in sync. So they are always running, I guess the split index is always running behind the write index, trying to catch up. And there is this slice of time in which they are out of sync. So we had a similar problem before when we were trying to communicate samples between the sample block, which has access to the samples, and the UI thread, which will use those samples to draw them. We had this sort of issue, and we have this temporary buffer in the middle. I have a drawing of this. We have this temporary buffer in the middle to allow for the communication between the sample block and the UI thread. And this is some amount of give between the concurrency of between the running time of the sample block and the running time of the UI thread. So there is this space that we can live in. The UI thread and the sample block, they may not run in sync, but as long as the desynchronization is not too big, it's fine. And the same story is happening between the write index and the split index. There is some amount of concurrency that is natural. So what we are going to do to fix this is have some amount of give. We are going to not plot some of this temporary image to allow for this amount of time that is in between the write index and the split index. That's the idea. It's kind of a complicated idea, but I hope that you get it. If you don't, let me know in the chat. Speaking of which, I would love to have such a plugin so that I can see what other effects are doing to the signal. Yeah, well, you kind of can as a workaround, because I am going to be building effects that do this, that show you what they're doing to the amount that it's possible. So for instance, if I do a limiter, I will do something like relimit, which is drawing the waveform over time, and it is drawing the gain reduction over time as well. So I'm going for something that looks like this. But what about plugins that don't have this kind of visualization? Well, you can do some, I may do plugins that do that, that analyze that, but there are some things that you can use, like the gain reduction scope, and you have to set it up. It's not super simple. you have to put the compressor here, and then I will disable my own plugin. I will come here to REAQ and send the outputs to track 3 and 4 as well. So tracks 3 and 4 are coming here without any changes, and channels 1 and 2 are going through recomp. And if I start compressing stuff, now you can see the gain reduction here, and it's also drawing the gain reduction there. So it kind of does what I want to do for any kind of plugin, but it doesn't work all that well. At least I don't think so, because the gain reduction is going up instead of down, and it occupies the upper third of the screen. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, it is something that kind of does what I want to do for any plugin. And I may do something like this as well using my drawing library and everything. But in any case, until that is a reality, you can try to use this. It is kind of cool. And there is also Plugin Doctor and other things. Right. So there are two problems. First, the problem of hiding some space, and then the problem of detecting whether we are drawing or not. Oh, and isn't it interesting? The effect is disabled, but its UI is still running, so it's not listening to any audio. But the effect is still running, the UI is still running, because you may want to bypass the effect and still play around with the parameters. Like I may want to disable REAQ, but I still want to be able to change the bands, right? So this is disabled, it's not listening to any audio, but it's still drawing the interface. So it's just drawing whatever was there. It's just looping over whatever is there. And of course, there is somewhere in here that disconnect, but it may be happening in a moment of silence, or it may be even here where you can sort of see a spike. But as soon as I enable this again, we are back into writing. And as I stop speaking, you can see moments of silence. And you can also see that split point right there. Right, so what we are going to do is to add a bit more space to the drawing canvas, and then we are going to hide that space. So let's first find the place where well, actually, let's first review what we have here, because we have a lot going on and I don't know exactly where I want to add this. I think that it will be something similar to this. This is determining, not this. That's determining the size of this circular buffer used to communicate between the audio thread and the video thread. I will have something similar for, it's going to be another constant. That's why I'm putting it here. And this is going to be the image. I'll call this the split width. Okay, and what is this value? What is the split width? Well, let's be pessimistic. We are going to base this on the refresh rate, which may be surprising, but it is related to the refresh rate. Let me show you. The refresh rate is 60 right now, and I will drop the plugin fresh into the track so we can actually see the size of the waveform display. So, the size of the problem here. The problem is relatively small, I would say. Now let's change the frame rate for something very low. We are running the UI thread less often. This is going to have an effect on the concurrency issue I mentioned. And now it is slightly bigger. I would say that this is about double the size of what was here before. I may be biased, I may be wrong, but it does look like this is bigger. So the problem is related to the refresh rate. And well, actually, if I change the refresh rate, I will have to change this as well. So I might not want to compute this here. I may want to compute this here, which is kind of awkward because it is always going to be the same for all instantiations of the waveform, but that's fine. It's just because I need the refresh rate, and the refresh rate may be set. Oh, I didn't set it, but it may be set by the user on the init block before allocating anything. Like that. So if the user is informing me the refresh rate, I might as well just use that. So that's why I'm going to put this, the initialization of the constant over here. Is it really a constant? If it's, well, it will not change its value, but it will be, the same value will be assigned over and over. Okay, so it's based on the refresh rate. Now I have to think about how wide I want to make this. Let's say that this problem is about, how big is this problem? At 15 frames per second, I think this is, the problem is as big as, it's as large as it can be. And right now it is 20, about 20 pixels. But I'm on a retina display, so that's 20 times 2. It's 40 pixels. So it's about 40 pixels divided by 15. It's about 3 times the refresh rate. Let's make it 5. So the refresh rate in this example was 15. I had this at 15 on the example that we are looking at. So it's 15 times 5 is 75 pixels. That should be plenty because the problem seems to be around 40 pixels. So there you go. This is very hacky. Now we have to take in account the split width when we are allocating the image. About here. So the image width needs to be a bit wider. I think I may want to do that when allocating the waveform display, however. It's the width you give me plus the split width. Because doing it here will have fewer consequences for the rest of the code. It's just going to keep working. It's just going to allocate a bit more space. Let me show you. Okay, so it's still running just the same. It's still looking just the same. And it still has that problem here on the left. Oh, it's not running just the same. It jumped around weirdly. Interesting. I wasn't expecting that. There is a bug somewhere. Okay, since there is a bug, let's revisit this decision to see if there's anything else that I want to be doing. I don't think so. I think that the image width should be taking in account the split width. Maybe not, because maybe you will want to have access to this outside, and it could be surprising that this has been added. So you get back what you set. Okay, so now let's revisit where I'm allocating the image, and I will add, well, I think I will need this value several times. So let me just find a good variable name for it. I'll call this the real image width. So there will be the real image width or the raw image width, and then the one that we actually deal with when bleeding stuff. I'll call this width split. I don't know, it's a bad name, but whatever. And that's what this is. And then what we have to do next is revisit every location where we have image width and consider whether we want to have width split there. When allocating the image, for sure, I will want width split. Then this is drawing into the image. So I will want to go width split. This is the right index. The right index has to take in account the split. This is the split index. The split index should take in account the width with the split. But when bleeding, I should not be taking that into account. Now I will have to take the split in account. I just have to be smart about how I do it. So let's go over these coordinates. I'll try to get them right, but I'm most probably gonna get them wrong because for whatever reason, I have the hardest time reasoning about these coordinates. Let's go over this. Let's give this a try. Oh, Bo is saying, Tail is saying something interesting. In Weedle, there is this thing called lice, which is for working with graphics. And the width plus extra space due to rounding up is called span. But I think I will not do that. I may rename things, though. I may rename this image width. I may rename to viewport. So there will be the image width, which is what I'm now calling the image width with split. And then I will have a viewport into that. And this is me actually drawing into the viewport. I may rename all these variables later. It's easier to rename things later as long as I have a somewhat good name to work with. Just want to reason about what's going on. So this split is splitting everything to the left of the split point. You know what? It may be handy. It may be good for me to do the following. I will bleed the image, no scaling, no rotation at 0, 0. That's the source. And then the source width will be the image width with split, because why not? The image height. And then x plus width, no plus, no minus, just x and y. And dash. If I understand correctly, this is just going to bleed the image as it is. So it's going from left to right, and then it wraps around and starts overriding on the left. And then it is overriding on the left. Now it's weird that this is going for so long and it's moving to the right. And oh, I guess 60 frames per second, 60 hertz is a lot. So this is the amount of give. This is the width that I'm giving myself. It's probably too much. But whatever, at least it's doing what I wanted it to do. So it's drawing from left to right, which is a reasonable thing to do, by the way. Many plugins do this. They draw the waveform like this, and it's not so bad. It's not terrible. But yeah, we want to have that scrolling thing. In fact, Real Image by default does this kind of drawing. I had to enable auto scroll display, otherwise it was doing this. It was erasing as it wrapped back around, but it does it like this. So I suppose that some people like it. Definitely the Caucus people like it because they made it the default, but I prefer it like this. I think it makes a lot more sense. Anyway, so this is the view, and this is the split. This is not the split index. This is the right index just merely going along. And then on top of that, let's GFX rect at the split index. And Y. And the width can be something like 5, and the height can be the height of the image. No, not the height of the image, the height of the component. And I need to set a color, so let's set some red. And let's make it not fully opaque, half transparency. Now there you go. You can see the right head as well as the split index, and they are not in sync at all. That may explain the weird drawing issue we were seeing before. This is actually a great visualization for me to debug stuff. So I guess I have to revisit what's going on with this desync. Alternatively, I mean, let's take a step back. The whole reason why I have this split index and I have this talk about the right head may be desynced with the split index and everything, all of that was to decouple the drawing of the waveform with decouple the drawing of the waveform from the refresh of the screen or the passing of time. This concurrency issue between how many times the GFX block is called in a second and the passing of time. But it turns out that didn't make the waveform scrolling as smooth as I would like it. And when I see this updating from left to right, this is updating from left to right using the right index, and it doesn't look so bad. So how about this? How about I just ignore all of the issues I explained for the last half an hour, and I just split things based on the right index? How does that look? Does it look smooth? That's what we're about to find out, because that will simplify a whole lot of things. So the code is going to be similar to what we have, except that instead of the split index, I will be using the right index. Let's double check this. So I'm splitting the image, no scaling, no rotation at source is 0, 0, and I am going up to the right index, image height. So that's the left of where I wrote to already, and I want to plot that to the right. So it's x plus width minus right index, that's correct, and y, that seems correct. And then this also seems correct. Then I'm bleeding everything to the right of the right index, and I want to do that on the left. Okay, so that is going to be bleeding the image, no scaling, no rotation, everything to the right of the index. So I am at right index and y 0. Then what is the width? The width is the width of the whole image minus the right index. And image height doesn't change, it's the same as that one. I plot at xy, so I'll be plotting in the left portion of the destination, and then this looks correct. Okay. Okay, so now this is the waveform display without any kind of attempt at synchronizing, and it does jump around, but it doesn't jump around terribly. Oh, it jumped around terribly now. That was weird. Why is it doing that? It seems like a bug, not a synchronization issue. Weird. But there is some nice side effects. It doesn't have that glitch on the left. And as I go to another plugin, what is it going to do? It's not going to be running the UI thread. So as soon as I come back, it is just going to have whatever was there and continue picking up things. I should probably at this point erase everything that was there, but it's not a terrible behavior. If I think relimit does something similar. Let's try. So if I click, then I go somewhere else, and I'm leaving enough time here for that click to scroll to the left, but I don't think it will. When we reopen relimit, I think that we'll see the click moving to the left. And here it is, moving to the left. So relimit is not erasing the thing when it is drawing again. And what about hours? As soon as I changed, I saw the click kind of glitching to the right. But in any case, I am spending some time here, and I think that, again, I will not see the click having been completely wiped out. I think we'll see the click just scrolling to the left merrily. So what we implemented here is sort of similar to the relimit behavior, except for this jumping around that is happening. And this jumping around may have to do with this whole with split situation I introduced. What if I don't have with split? Because I was computing the, not relimit, I was computing the right index based on with split, and I was drawing without. So that is an issue. Waveform. Okay, so now it shouldn't be jumping around like that. And it doesn't seem to be. All right, I guess we could use this and call it a day. It is like ever so slightly kind of flickering on the screen. I think that with the split index and everything, it is smoother. But I don't know if it's worth it. It gets so complicated. Syncing everything gets so complicated. And even that behavior of detecting that we have gone to another plugin and can come back gets so annoying. Let's experiment with this again. I think that this time we'll just see the click where it was, continue moving to the left, just like relimit. Perfect. Not perfect, but okay. I am ready to call it, guys. Yeah, I can leave this here. I don't care. Then this split width can go away. This part can go away. And I think I'm going to throw out everything that had to do with the split index, just to make my life easier, and at some point I may revisit this. Yeah. Yeah, let's do this. Let's find every occurrence of split. So now I only have 11 pieces to my data structure from 0 to 10. And this is kind of useful. Well, not the rectangle, because the rectangle was to show the split index. But Yeah, Tail is saying in the chat that I wonder if other developers also tried all this and then decided it wasn't worth it. I don't know. I have that itch to do it right, and I know that relying on the right index is wrong. It also is not terribly wrong. It kind of looks the same as the other one, and it's doing less work. So it's saving CPU, which is good. But if you look around at the other plugins that have this sort of visualization, RealImage, let's compare the smoothness of our plugin to other plugins, and we are at a disadvantage because our plugin is JSFX and RealImage is C++. But if you compare the two, it doesn't look that far off. This one kind of also jumps around. And let's compare to something like the Isotope, what is it called? Ozone. Now, my voice is probably going to glitch now because when you load Ozone into a track, all hell breaks loose and your computer fries. All right, so at the maximizer, this is smooth. Maybe that's why it's taking so much CPU. This doesn't glitch at all. It doesn't jump around. This jumps around. It seems like this is refreshing at a lower rate too. This is what I wanted to have. This is what I aspire to. We'll get there someday, maybe. But good enough is better than nothing done. But this is kind of useful. This is a different way of visualizing it. So I think I will give it as an argument. Yeah, let's do that. When you are drawing, you can give me the color and you can give me, I guess before that, scroll, which we'll look at here. So scroll, do you want me to scroll? If you want me to scroll, then I will do it for you. Do you want me to not scroll? All right, I can do that too. And then when calling this, I have to pass, do I want this to scroll? Yes, I do. So I am scrolling. Great. Do you want me to scroll? Well, not quite. Could you not? Yes, sir, for sure. I am no longer scrolling. And of course, the non-scrolling version is a lot smoother because all the flickering happens here in this seam connecting the two. And that's something that you cannot see. But when it's scrolling around, the whole waveform is kind of jittery because of that. So that may be the reason why this is the default in RealImage, because it looks better when you implement things the way that I'm doing. I don't know. Do we want to have that erasing? We may, right? You may want to erase the whole thing when we wrap around. So I guess I will have another parameter. Besides scroll, I will have erase on, because I think that having a view like this is kind of useful too. You do see the stuff here on the right for more time, right? What was the plugin that was erasing the whole thing? It was RealImage. So if I stop scrolling, it's going to jump to, and it's going to erase the whole thing. So you can barely see what happened here on the right because it's on the screen for a split second, which I think is not ideal. There's another plugin called Compressor by Melody Production that does a similar visualization. What do? They don't erase. See, there is a precedent for what I'm talking about. And they also have this as the default, just like RealImage, and it looks super great, it's super smooth. It does have that seam, it's showing the right head, which RealImage wasn't. It's not showing the right head. So maybe we want to show the right head. I don't know. But in scrolling mode, how do I get into scrolling mode? No, not like that. How do I get into scrolling mode? No, not like that. How do I get into scrolling mode? No, not like that. How do I get into scrolling mode? It can't scroll, can it? I think we have seen this scrolling before. I don't know. I think we have seen this scrolling in a previous stream, but I don't know how to make it. Anyway, so there is a precedent to having both, and there is a precedent to erasing or not erasing, and showing the playhead or not showing the playhead. So we'll have all of those options. Let's commit something. I'm getting weird for not having committed for so long. All right, this looks good. So scroll and erase on, what is it called? The turnover, the wraparound, erase on wrap, for the lack of a better name. So erase on wrap. Do I want me to erase on wrap? True. Let's try to erase on wrap. So this is going to be here. When this happens, we are wrapping around. We are taking the right index and we are moving it to the left. So what do I want to happen there? If scroll and erase, not that, erase on wrap. If I am to erase on wrap, then how do I erase something? Well, we learned that today, didn't we? You do this. And then I go to 0, 0. My width is the image width. My height is the image height. And these are the multipliers, a bunch of zeros. That's what erases stuff. Okay, let's re-add this to the track. And then it should behave like real image. It's gonna go to the right and then erase everything when it wraps back to the left. See? See how it's doing that? It's not doing that. Why is it not doing that? Oh, because scroll should be false. When I'm not scrolling and I want to erase on wrap. Second attempt. This is gonna be great because this is not even drawing anything. So I put my code in the wrong location. Tail caught the mistake. It's not scroll, but it's not here either. This is... Why is this the wrong place to do this? And what is this read index about? Okay, that is the read index on the samples. Nothing to do with the problem here. Oh, this is when we are about to... Yeah, this location here, this loop is when we have collected enough samples to draw a column. That's not the intent. What I want is to check this guy. If the right index has reached the left, that is when it's smaller than the step and the step is 1. So when the right index has wrapped around and I'm not scrolling and I want to erase on wrap, then I erase the screen. Now it is going to behave like real image. It's drawing to the screen, and when I wrap around, I erase everything. Okay, good. Then we can No, I cannot commit without oh no, what is that? I cannot commit without looking at what I just did, so bear with me as I git git show. I included the arrays on wrap and I passed through. Okay. Then let's have that M compressor thing where I actually show this bar with the right hat. It can come in handy, especially when you are not erasing on wrap. So let's see, we'll add another option. That option will be, how about I just take a color and an opacity, and if the opacity is 0, I don't have to draw it, but it may be faster to draw it with completely transparent thing than to do the conditional to check if I should draw it. I don't know. But yeah, so this is the color. I guess I will have to rename this because we'll have more colors coming up. So I'll call this the color, the fill color. And I will also add in a fill alpha. And I will set GFX A to fill alpha. This way, if you want, you can have a semi-transparent translucent waveform. Then let's take in, let's put this in new lines because we are about to get a bunch of arguments. So we have the fill color and alpha. We'll also have, I'll call this the cursor color and alpha. And you can pass here undefined and 0 if you want. If you don't want to have the cursor. Yeah, whatever. So I bleeded the waveform itself. Now it's time for me to GFX rect at the right index. Not quite. I don't want to rect into the temporary image because the next time we go around, the cursor is going to be in a different position. But then it means that I will have to take in account the x coordinate of the whole component plus the right index. And what is my y? It's just the y of the component. What is my width? Well, I guess I could receive that as an argument as well. That will be the cursor width. So we'll have cursor width, and we'll have a height of the whole component. And we need to set the color to the cursor color, and we need to set the alpha to the cursor alpha. And if this alpha is set, then this may be, if this alpha is set to something less than 1, then this bleeding may misbehave. I want to draw the filling with some alpha, but I don't want to bleed with some alpha. I have to reset the alpha at the end. I want to bleed at full opacity. Then over here, I set the alpha for the cursor, and I do this. Okay, seems good. Let's try drawing the cursor. When does that make sense? When we are not scrolling and we are not erasing. Let's see our arguments here, because now we have a bunch of them. So the waveform, X, Y, width, and height. Then do I want it to scroll? No. Do I want to erase? No. Do I want... What color do I want for the fill? That seems good. What is the opacity of the fill? I will make it slightly transparent. Is that a thing? It is a thing. Then what is the width of my cursor? I think I have something like stroke width, don't I? Stroke width of 8. Oh, so there you go. That's something that I could do to check. I could just check if my width is greater than 0. I will do that here. That's not all, folks. We still have to pass the color in the alpha. I will pass this as like a red and an opacity of 80%. Let's see what that looks like now. And there is a mistake. Where is the mistake? At block GFX 55. Oh, I think it's this extra comma. I thought that trailing commas was a thing in JS Effects. It seems that I was wrong. Okay, this is pretty much like with the Melda production thing. Not bad, not bad. I didn't pick colors that I like, but yep, I'm happy with this. And there are more things I could do to this. I could make it fancier by maybe what else could I do to make this fancier? Could draw a line here in the middle. But I think I'll leave that to the... I think I will leave that... Oh, Theo liked it. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, I think I will leave drawing the line here in the middle, particularly when I'm silent and there is nothing on the background. You just won't see anything. See, there is nothing there. So I could make it... just draw something there, or I could leave it to the user to draw a line behind. I think I'll leave it to the user of this, because then you can draw a grid behind this however you see fit, including a line in the middle if that's what you want. And this way I'm not prescribing anything. If you talk at the right time, the background, you get some mustache. Yeah, I do see what you mean. Okay. Now there is one extra thing that I would like to be able to do here. That thing is the contours. We have been around this block for a while now. I can not see the mustache. I don't think I need my face there anymore. I proved the point that this thing is transparent as it should be. But the thing that I want is contours. So let's try to do that, because that can be tricky and interesting. Let's pick better colors and let's remove my face from the background. And let's just do everything full transparency. Okay. Yeah, looking good. So there are plenty of things that I want to do. Like we had an option to take the square root of the waveform in a previous iteration, because that's something that comes with REAPER. So we could do that, but let's do the contours. The contours are the most challenging part of all this. Oh, Bo has to go. Bye, Bo. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow, probably over at Aria's channel. I think we're streaming together. I think we'll be doing the pitch shifter, or maybe we are going to talk about audio production. I don't really know. In any way, I see you tomorrow. Right, so let's try to do the contour. For the contour, I will have to keep some things around that I currently don't have, which is kind of interesting. Right now, I am computing the column, but I'm not keeping the column around for next time. I will need to keep the previous column around for next time, because I will want to draw a line between the previous column and the current column. So let's add stuff to the data structure. Oh, no. We do have it. It's here. No, but that's the current one. That's the current column. Let's revisit the data structure. We have the samples, how many samples are already included in the current column. We have the current column here as a partial state, because the GFX block may be right in the middle of a section where I don't have enough samples to compute the next column, so I keep it around. But I will need to keep the previous one around as well. So I will say, I don't need to have the samples, just the maximum and the minimum. I will say previous. 10, 11, and 12. And now my data structure is back to 13, 0 to 12 points or fields. And then I will want to retrieve the maximum and the minimum previous. And at the end, I will want to write the maximum and the minimum previous, which are new local variables. Here. Great. And then I will want to start these guys at something. How do I want to start these guys? Well, they have to start as undefined. Or maybe 0. They can start at 0. I'm happy with starting them at 0. Did I cover everything? I think I did. So now I can start actually using the values. Well, when I set... When do I set the maximum and minimum? Right here. I'm resetting the maximum and the minimum. So I better store the maximum and the minimum before I reset them. And now, just like that, I do have the maximum and the minimum of the previous column available to me right as I am drawing a column. At that point, I can draw a rectangle, all right, but I will also GFX line. This is the version that takes 2 points, right? JS effects, graphics line. Yes, this is the version that takes 2 points, X, Y, 1 and 2. So I will go from, I will actually have to compute a bunch of these things, aren't I? I think I will. It will look something like this. So maybe I don't want to compute these guys, but instead I will want to keep these guys around, the top and the bottom. Yep. Let's rename every occurrence of that into top, and let's rename every occurrence of this into bottom. Oops. Into bottom. And let's not store these guys, but instead top and bottom. Okay, let's review what I changed, see if I got everything correct. Previous top and bottom. Previous top and bottom 0. Not quite, it should be half of the height. I could just specify this as half of the height, because it's the middle of the picture. Yeah, whatever. And then when I am drawing the line, I can use a line that goes from my right index -1. I know that this is wrong, but I'm about to. We'll think about this. Specifically, it's wrong when it wraps around, but I want to get something done. So this is the line that draws the top. Let's have another one that draws the bottom. And then I have used the columns top and bottom. I can store them for posterity. All right, and we are drawing this in red, aren't we? No, we are not drawing this in any color. Let's set this to red. And now our waveform has a contour to it. Ta-da! Oh boy, that was a lot of back and forth to finally get to this, but I think it looks great. I mean, it doesn't look great in red, but I think it looks great in a color that makes sense. And because we are drawing the contour, we are also just drawing the line here, so it works out perfectly. This is working better than I expected it would. But there is an issue. Or is there? I thought there was an issue when it wrapped around, but it's not doing anything crazy when it wraps around because it's always getting the right index -1, so it just works. It just works, you all. Yeah, let's assign this not to red, but to a given color. And I will not let you specify the width of the contour because I am kind of relying on the GFX line thing, and that is like, it doesn't allow for different thicknesses, and to do different thicknesses I would need to draw a bunch of squares next to one another to have them pretend to be a line. It gets really annoying. It probably is lower, so I would just not bother. In this context, it's good enough to just have a single line, I claim. So I just need to receive a color. Let's get to the arguments of GFX draw. And I have the fill. I think it makes sense to have fill, contour, and cursor. So I'll call this the stroke color and the stroke alpha. And if you don't want a stroke, you could pass an alpha that is 0. Let's get to where I'm using this. And I have a blue with opacity of 100. I will have a darker blue or a lighter blue. I think I'll have a darker one with opacity of 100. And I will change this to be very similar to that, except that it will be stroke. Not stroke, stroke. Fill and stroke is the terminology used by SVGs. That's what I am going for here. I don't love the fact that this is image column previous top, and this is just column top. Yeah, I guess I am just punning on the fact that in this loop, everything here is about the image. Okay, I'll leave it like that. I was thinking of maybe renaming all these variables to have a image in the beginning, but enough namespacing. Okay, I chose relatively okay colors, and my stroke width is just too wide for my taste. I'll put a 4 here. If I am nitpicking on the colors and width, it means that I am on the right track. All right, this looks very decent. This looks awesome. It has some depth to it because I chose a darker color, so see, has some depth to it. I will call it. I will say, this is good. This is perfectly acceptable. This was a ride. Oh boy. I'm looking forward to actually using the waveform display for something. Let's do the square root because it's so easy. The square root, let's do it. So what do I mean by the square root? The timeline has been running for 22 minutes. So when I record something here, this is the waveform display in REAPER, and there is this peaks display settings with an option to scale. Oh, and rectify. I should do rectification as well. I don't have time to do rectification today, or I don't have the energy to do rectification, but this is so easy that I will do it this one. But okay, so this is just scaling by the square root, and you can see that it just affects the height of the waveform. So let's do that. I'll add an option. Where do I want to add this option? I guess it's over here. I'll do it there. Square root. And do I want to take the square root? Yeah, of course. So right after the height, I will say true. And then when do I want to take the square root? Right as I am computing the top and the bottom. I could do it here, but then I would be computing the square root of every sample. I could just compute the square root of the maximum or the minimum. That's clever. So I'll do it here. Do I want to take the square root? Square root? Question mark. If so, take the column maximum and minimum. And square root them. I will leave this without the square root on this side and add again the waveform display over here. And this is taking the square root. Isn't that something? It's trying to take the square root of negative numbers. I made this mistake before. This is how you fix it. You take the square root of the absolute value and you multiply by the sign. Second try. And this is the square root version. It's just bigger. It may be good for something, for some people. I don't know. Whatever. It's there. I implemented it. So there you go. Have it. Is there more that needs to be done? Rectification. There is more that needs to be done. Will I do rectification today? No, sir. I am wrapping this up. I see you tomorrow over here to do more. So more waveforms, maybe rectification, maybe something else. Or I will see you over at IDDQD Sound and we'll talk about audio production. I don't really know. Just you'll see if a thumbnail appears here or over at IDDQD. Thank you everyone who was here helping out and commenting. So Tail, Bo, and Stalin Green, and anyone else who is not active on the chat but is still watching this. I appreciate you being here. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.